All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming. This is the third session of Breakouts. I'm Jesse Gelliff, the Communications Director with the Secular Student Alliance, and it is my absolute pleasure to introduce August Brunsman, the Executive Director of the Secular Student Alliance. August actually started as the Executive Director back in 2001 when the SSA formed. He was part of that creation process. He started getting paid for it in 2004, so he served as a volunteer for years. Before that, he actually helped found the group, the Students for Free Thought, here at The Ohio State University. Besides that, he served as the Secretary of the Secular Coalition for America, was involved with the Institute for Humanist Studies, has been everywhere, done everything, is an incredible human being as well as a boss, and he's going to be talking about how to be a campus fundraising ninja. Let's give it up for August.
All right, there's no way my talk is going to live up to that intro, but that's okay. Thank you all so much for coming. I know we're running a little bit behind schedule, so I'm going to try to kind of rush through this, and I apologize for that, but here we are. So anyway, obviously, well, okay, just who has raised money for their group before? Okay, who has not yet raised money for their group? Okay, good. Okay, so like half of you. Okay, so it's different for different people, but most people find the act of fundraising to be a very scary, unnatural act. As anybody who did ask for money, was it scary for any of you? Raise your hands if it was. Yeah, oh, look at that. Okay, yeah. Any of you who haven't yet asked for money think that maybe it might be scary? Yeah, okay, good. You're right. So there's that. But you know, that's okay. Lots of things that are worth doing in life are scary. But the thing is, you need to have strategies to help you engage those activities and take them on. I find that when I'm taking on a scary task, it can help to have a song in my heart to carry my spirits and help me screw my courage to the sticking point. So the thing is about me, which say Jesse and Liz and Ashley and other people who've known me for a while can tell you, is that I'm not actually capable of making singing noises. So I sometimes am also like, you know, I'll say the words and bellow, but it's not actually singing. So I don't actually have a song to share with you, but I do have a refrain. And when I've given this talk before, I have made the audience say the refrain like 80 million times throughout the talk. I'm not going to do that to you guys because I heard a memo that you're all super brilliant and you don't need to repeat things in order to remember them. So who knew? You're unlike other human beings. But anyway, but we're running short on time, which is why I'm not going to make you go through it. But here's the campus fundraising refrain, which I have rendered with HTML tags before and after. Just that cool. All right, number one, if your group exists, it's worth funding. 2, funding is about partnering. Understand what your partners want. 3, funding streams are like habits or relationships. And 4, diversity rules. So those are going to be the 4 pieces of our fundraising refrain that we're going to take with us as we go forth into the scary land of asking people to fund our secular student group. All right, so that's the end. So okay, if your group exists, it's worth funding. So, all right, you want money, but what do you want it for? So, like, there are all kinds of things that you could want money for. Maybe you want to bring in speakers. Maybe you want to put up a billboard, buy some t-shirts, eat a tasty fish, whatever it is. As atheists together, you would be eating the tasty fish. That's why it's okay to pay for it with your group's money. These are all sorts of things that, like, physically the money is going to help you procure. But I'm actually going to make the case to you that the things that you're actually going to buy with the money are less important than the social constructs that your group engages itself in when it goes through the process of asking for money and thinking about your group as though it were an entity that was worth asking for money for. Because guess what? It is. But so here are some of those social constructs you're going to be tapping into. Relationships. When you go out and you go to the leader of the off-campus group that is in your town and you tell her, you know, look, we want to bring in PZ Myers, but he is going to cost this much to bring in, and you know the Secular Student Alliance is only giving us half of that, or whatever it is. Can your group, you know, pitch in the other half? And they say yes, and it's fantastic, you bring PZ. But the thing that's really amazing about that is not just that, you know, your campus gets to learn more about squids, but also that you built a relationship with that group. And when you come back later, you're going to be able to ask for more money. And what's even better than that, or well, maybe it's not better, but also equivalently good, is that now the leader of that off-campus group knows who you are and can say like, hey, oh yeah, we helped fund, students for free thought at the University of, Ipsilupi or whatever. And that's not a real town. Maybe it is actually, but whatever. I feel sorry for those people. Anyway. They're going to talk about that. And this is somebody who's promoting your group now, not necessarily because you asked for money. Well, I mean, technically, yes, because you asked for money. But that was the way the relationship began, and that's how you became relevant. And that is true not just for like an off-campus atheist group that already agrees with you philosophically, but it's true for the GLBT group that you work with. It's true for some, department head that you end up asking for money. Those relationships are really important, and it allows you to engage with them in a constructive way, frequently in a joint venture, which makes you interesting beyond the fact that you're atheists. Another thing that getting funding does that brings to your group is clout. When people hear, hey, last year we were able to raise $9,500 for all of our different programs throughout the entire year. When a freshman hears that in your first meeting of the year, or they get told that in an orientation table, and they're thinking about, which groups do I want to get involved with? Suddenly, you're a group that is doing things, that is responsible, that maybe can help them develop skills to go out and build their future career. And other ways, you're building clout in terms of, again, those same groups I was talking about earlier, departments, even theist groups that maybe see like, hey, the atheists are really getting their act together. What's up with that? So that kind of clout can really help, even if you're wasting the money on stupid things. Hopefully you're not, but there's that benefit. Another thing that will help you bring about is institutional sophistication. Your group will learn, how do you fill out the form to get the money from the Student Activities Board? How do you prepare a budget? Things like that. All sorts of stuff that are going to help your group be more professional and have more people get a shared understanding of what it is your group is trying to accomplish and how your group is trying to get there. And the last thing that I managed to think of, that your group is going to get this sort of construct that you're tapping into, which I actually think is the most important thing, is self-knowledge. Your group, through the process of having to sit down and be like, what am I going to tell to another human being that's going to make them decide to give my group money? When you go through that process, which when you sit down to begin it can sometimes seem insane, that is going to make you sharpen your thinking and think a lot about what it is you're trying to do, how you're communicating that, and how you're going to get there. And that process of thinking through very deliberately what you're doing, of what you are spending your time on, which you may not believe it yet, but your time has value, and you're spending your time, you're spending your money, probably, on getting your group to move forward. When you go through the process of figuring out how to articulate those values to others, you're going to come up with better ideas, and your group is going to be more effective. So if your group exists, it's worth funding. So we get to go through the campus fundraising refrain again. I will go through it quickly rather than making you repeat it. If your group exists, it's worth funding. Funding is about partnering. Understand what your partners want. Funding streams are like habits or relationships, and diversity rules. So, funding is about partnering. Understand what your partners want. Okay, so when I get into, we're still it's a little scary, I think. What helps me is maybe to organize my thoughts and get things, squared away and create a matrix in order to help me understand. Oh, there's a handout. You should go, what page is it, Jesse? Do you know what page? This is much easier to read in your handout than it is. 35? 35. Turn to page 35 and you can see the matrix. No, not that kind of matrix. This campus fundraising matrix. So let me explain what's going on here really fast. On the x-axis there at the bottom, you have startup cost, which is basically how much of your time it takes to build the initial contact, to make the first ask to this particular funding source. And it's not cost in money necessarily, it's cost in your time. And then on the y-axis, you have return on investment after you've paid that startup cost. So how easy it is to keep that funding stream going once you've paid that in. Startup cost is bad. So the higher we are, the more over to the right we are, towards that nasty little red star, that we want to avoid. And the higher return on investment that we get after we've already paid the startup cost. That's good. We want to get toward the little green star. You will notice that there's all sort of clustered towards the red star. But what are you going to do? So here's where they are. There's a lot of them, and I don't have time to go through what each of them are. Do they all make sense? Or rather, which ones don't make sense? Can I explain any of them really quickly, if any of them are? Because they're all really short, and it may not be obvious what I mean by participants. Okay, so if you were doing an interfaith trip with Campus Crusade for Christ down in New Orleans to rebuild houses, etc., participants would be the individuals. So say everybody has to pay $100 to chip in for gas money and to help pay for the lodging once they get down there. That would be a participant in this scenario. Are we good? Okay. So when you are making your case and explaining to other people what it is you value, when you're talking to all these folks about what it is you want to do, here's some things to kind of help you think that through. Especially when you're talking to your activities fund, which you'll notice is the thing that is pretty much the furthest from the red star and one of the closest things to the green star. Well, it is the closest thing to the green star. And it's the furthest thing from the red star. So that's good. I think your activities fund should be like the first thing you do, maybe after taking money out of your own pocket. So your group represents a minority. Universities love diversity. Sell that. Let them know that you are providing a community to people that are not part of the mainstream, and that you can help your university be a more diverse, welcoming, intellectually rich place because you're on campus and you're well-funded. There's an excellent article, which I believe the whole name of is on the back page of my handout there, by Goodman and Mueller, which is in a peer-reviewed journal on academic development, and it is all about how atheists are not well received, not well supported, even at the liberal communist academia of America. So that article is your friend. I'm positive you all have access to libraries that have access to that journal. If you don't have access to the journal that it's in for some weird reason, let me know and I will put you right in touch with Goodman, and he would be so happy to send you the article. And if you call him up, he would be happy to talk your ear off for forever about the article. He's an amazing guy. He's actually the advisor to the SSA group at the University of Indiana, which is in Pennsylvania. But whatevs. And it's actually, it's Mueller is that one, Goodman is elsewhere. But anyway, that article can really be an excellent tool to get more credibility, to be able to go and engage with the diversity angle as you talk to folks. Every time you apply for funding, make sure to explain the value of your group in general, in addition to the value of the particular project you're working on. Because people are not necessarily going to remember, yeah, you're building a relationship with them, that's great. Yeah, maybe it's the same person on the funding board the last time you applied for funds. Probably not. So every single time, be sure to explain the value of your group. Whatever kind of partner, be it the activities board, or be it a foundation, be it an off-campus group, be it individual be it your alumni, whoever. This is not asking your parents for beer money and pretending it's for books, okay? This is asking people to engage in a venture that they are excited about and that they want to share. They want to be a partner in what it is you're doing. There's nothing wrong with asking them, hey, what is it exactly you want to accomplish? What are the goals of the Activity Funding Board? Do you have a list of goals, a list of things that you want to see accomplished this year? And they will tell you, and lots of other funders will be able to tell you what they're looking for. Ask them before you tell them what you want, and your ask will be a far better ask. So funding is about partnering. Understand what your partners want. The refrain, really fast, if your group exists, it's worth funding. Funding is about partnering. Understand what your partners want. Funding streams are like habits or relationships, and diversity rules. So that's it. I know we're running out of time, so while I've been talking to you, I've combined the last 2 points into 1 point, and we're going to just do them as one together. So funding streams are like habits or relationships, and diversity rules. There is a big chart, I think, on the handout that you have, and I'm not going to step through this bit by bit, but sort of like the general trend here is that this is like a year of your group in terms of activities. So first, Punch and Pie for the first meeting, and then you have him at Meta speak, and then you do a New Orleans service trip, and then Susan Jacoby comes and speak, and then comes and speaks at your campus. And then you have a debate between Ayan Hersey Ali and William Lane Craig. Which if that ever happens, please let me know, because I would like to go there. But it's really expensive. So, and then at the top you have the cost of all those events that I just made up. And then sort of in the purple rows below are where different amounts of money have been sourced through. So, it starts off with you, and then for the first event, and then you move on, and then, you ask, fellow student leaders, and you ask the Secular Student Alliance for some money. That's the national. Maybe you charge some membership dues, and it goes on and on and on, through every event throughout the course of the year. And you'll see that in each row, and this is way easier to follow in the paper handout. I see people like squinting at the screen. Way easier to follow on the paper. You'll see that those columns, with a couple exceptions because, life is noisy, the rows, that they go up. And that because you built a relationship, you are able to do more and more things without having to pay that startup cost over and over again, because you've already paid it. And a lot of that also ties into the stuff that Liz was talking about this morning with delegating. And it's really important that more than one person in your group knows what's going on. So if Timmy, your fundraising director, gets hit by a beer truck, you can be confident that Sally, the marketing director, can also go and fill out the paperwork for the Student Activities Fund. And that's also why diversity rules in two ways, both in people who know how to do things, but the way I was meaning it when I was putting this together was that, if, say, here, when we're doing the Susan Jacoby column here, the swag sale, for whatever reason, that doesn't come together. But you've got all these other funding sources that you've already tapped into, so it doesn't matter. You are stable enough that if one or two funding streams fall out, it doesn't really slow you down. So that's the long and the short of that. So funding streams are like habits or relationships, and diversity rules. So one last time, if your group exists, it's worth funding. Funding is about partnering. Understand what your partners want. Funding streams are like habits or relationships, and diversity rules. One last story, because I have 4 minutes left, because I rushed through that. I think the first time I gave that talk, I was like 10 minutes over. But anyway. So does anybody know who Ira Glasser is? Not from This American Life. That's Ira Glass. Good job. Usually you get some false positives on that one. Ira Glasser, actually, Ira Glasser is kind of, I don't even know him, but, well, I suppose I don't know a lot of my heroes, but he's a hero, and he should be a hero to almost everyone in this room. And the reason is that he was the executive director of the American Civil Liberties Union from 1978 until 2001. When Ira came in, the ACLU had a budget of about $4.5 million annually. When he left, it had a budget of about $45 million annually. When he came in, it was well organized in a handful of large cities around the country. When he left, there was an ACLU affiliate in every state in the Union and the District of Columbia. And the ACLU went from being an important voice for civil rights to a household name and something that enemies of freedom hate throughout the United States. And one of the things that makes a good executive director, well, one of the things that makes a great executive director is being a good fundraiser. And a friend of mine actually does know Ira and told me a story about an experience he had with Ira. So Ira was sitting in his office. The ACLU office is in New York City. He was reading the New York Times, which Ira considered to pretty much be considerably more holy than the Bible. Well, a lot more holy. I'm pretty sure I was an atheist, but anyway. Reading the New York Times, and he sees this article about this guy named Saul Polyak, this businessman, who has just donated $3 million to the Columbia School of Journalism to study the enforcement of the Bill of Rights. And Saul's like, wow, that seems like somebody that we should solicit. I don't recognize that name. I know most of our donors who've given anywhere near that much money. And Saul picks up the phone and calls his fundraising department. His development department is like, hey, can you look up a name for me? And it's Saul Polyak. And this was back, I think in the 80s. They didn't have computers. They had, filing cabinets. So, it took 10 minutes. Called him back. Like, yeah, no, nothing. And Saul's scratching his head. Oh, that's really odd. And then Ira Ira is sitting around, and Ira's like, huh. I also have a membership department. They handle when you get sent like a thing in the mail. Who gets sent things in the mail? Like the ACLU, yeah. Like every month. When you get sent a little card, the pledge card, that gets handled by a different department. That's different than the big donors. That's different than the development department. So Ira calls them up and is like, hey, do you have anybody in Manhattan that gives to us named Saul Polyak? And the membership department goes, looks at the records, comes back, and is like, yeah, we do. He gives $100 every year. He checked off the highest box every time on the little form he got. Yeah. So Saul's like, oh, interesting. Do you have his phone number? Yes. Oh, okay. So Saul gives him a call. Or I do that every time. Ira gives Saul a call. Ira is with the ACLU. Saul is the big donor. And it's like, hey, would it be possible for me to, come and meet with you sometime? I'm only a few blocks away. Wouldn't even have to take a cab. Would it be possible? And Saul is like, not quite in tears, but is kind of amazed because Ira is one of his personal heroes. And he is stunned that one of his personal heroes has just called him out of the blue and said, hey, can I sit down and have coffee with you? So anyway, Saul's like, I'm free now. So Ira grabs the friend of mine who told me the story, and they, walk 6 blocks or whatever it is to Saul's office, and they sit down and they meet with him, and Saul and Ira have this amazing dialogue and go on and on and on until they get to, they get into the meeting, and Ira says to Saul, I know this is incredibly important to you, that civil rights are incredibly important to you. Why did you give them $3 million to study it and give us $100 to enforce it? Do you know what Saul said? You didn't ask. Then Ira asked and gave him a big pile of money. So the swoosh there, the swoosh there is obviously the Nike logo. The point is just do it. Just get out there and ask. Yes, people will tell you no. People will be cranky with you sometimes. None of the donors I've ever worked with have been cranky, but some I hear it happens. And anyway, go ask, form relationships, gain that self-knowledge, get that institutional sophistication, go out and ask. I will be here all weekend, and apparently this is my job, so I guess I'll be around later too if you have more questions. Is lunch next, or are we? Yeah, all right, go eat lunch. Bye.